So what we're going to cover is the idea of inheritance and abstract classes and interfaces. So the way inheritance works is you'll have one class. I believe the textbook calls it a superclass. And then there are other classes that inherit functionality from that superclass. Come on, bring the picture up. Not really? Anyways, so here their example is. You have a bicycle, and then you have several different types of bicycles. You have a mountain bike, you have a racing bike, you have a tandem bike. Another example might be is you have a person class, and then you have multiple kinds of people. You have, hourly employees, and you have, instructors, and you have students, something like that. And the idea is that you can put things that every person or every bicycle has up in the superclass. And then in all of the subclasses and all the classes that inherit stuff from the bicycle class, you can add extra things that only apply to those specific. So maybe the idea of a student. Let's do a student. So we're going to come up here, make a new project, and then into the same package as our project, we're going to add, I wonder if I could get away with adding this all in one file. Like I say, I hate doing that, but it's nice just to be able to scroll up and down. So I think we're going to do that. This is bad programming. Every class ought to go in its own file. But we're going to make a class called person. Now what does every person have? They have a name and they have a birth date. They may have a whole bunch of other things, but that's enough. So if we were going to follow good design, we would make all these variables private, things like that. But in the interest of just illustrating inheritance, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give ourselves a name. It's a string. And a birth date. So down here in main, I could create a person. Person P1 is equal to new person. P1's dot name is Joe. P1's dot birthday. So you want 01/01/86, whatever. He's a youngster. Okay, actually he's 30 years old. I can't believe time flies. Okay, so now we're going to create a couple of other classes that are people. They inherit from the person class. So we're going to make a class called student. And it extends the person class, meaning it gets everything that its superclass person gets, and then it adds things on. Now the word superclass makes it sound like, it's even bigger and more important. No, it's actually vice versa. The superclass is the bare bones, and then the subclasses are the things that keep adding things onto it. So superclass doesn't mean big, it just means it's the ancestor. Some other textbooks call it the parent class. So person is the parent class, this is the child class, but this is the superclass, this is the subclass. So every person has a name and a birth date, but students have other things. They have a school that they're going to. Make it public. And they have a degree that they're seeking. So if we create a student, we can set that student's name and birth date, but we can also set this extra information. Student S1 is equal to new student. S1's dot name is equal to Joe. No, different student, Sam. S1's dot birth date February 2, born in 02, 2002 or 1902, we can't tell. That's why we shouldn't be using 2-digit years. That's what the big old ruckus over the millennium bug was. I'm going to make that say 1986 and make this say 2002. But since this is a student, we can set extra attributes that only the student has, that is not shared by every person. So s1.school, so go to row state, s1.degree is, webmaster or developer or programmer or whatever. Now we couldn't set a person's school, p1.school. Because P1 is not a student. P1 doesn't have access to that stuff. P1 only has access to the things that are in that class. Whereas a student has everything that's defined in the student class and everything that's in the person class. Now in the C++ language, you can inherit from more than one class. But in Java, you can only extend one class. That is the difference between Java and C++. However, there is another form of class called an interface, which you can use multiple. You can inherit from multiple interfaces. So you can kind of do the same thing. All right, I need to get rid of that. That's an error. So what we will lastly do at this little bitty example is I'm going to make a method that's part of our main class that prints out a student, or a person. So let's do this. System.out.println. We will print out their name, plus a space, plus their birth date. Let's call print on this person. And then let's call print on this student. And notice that even though this is a person, we're able to send a student to it as well, because a student is a person. It inherits everything from the person class. So we can pass either type of object into this print method. We could pass in a person object, we can pass in a student object. However, if we pass in a student object, that doesn't mean we can automatically get a hold of the school and the degree. Since this is defined as a person in this method, then the only things we could access without doing some tricky stuff would be the name and the birth date. If we wanted to print out those extra things, we probably ought to make a different version of print. We should overload it to accept different kinds of objects. Let's run this and see if it actually prints stuff. Alright, so it printed out our two things. Printed out Joe and printed out Sam. And we say, well, golly, I wish when it printed something out that it would print out their degree if they have one. So we need to add one more print. We're going to overload the print operator to take two different kinds of objects. Public static void print student s. And we're going to print out their name plus their school. And we don't have a p variable. I'm messing up there. s.name and s.school. And we can do that because the student does have a school, whereas that would be an error up here. So when we run it again, we see that when we passed a person to it, it knew to go to this method with the person as a parameter. But when we passed a student to it, it knew to go to this method. So that's overloading. We have overloaded this method to accept two different kinds of data. All right, I think, we could go in and create a third class that extends person, and we could put their, their job title, something like that. But I really think that that proves a point. I don't think that we need to, keep going on that.
So these will all be separate little.
So this is the superclass up here.
So I need to go above.
And that's the
public
subclass.
class and then the assignment 9, or is that?
Right, right. So really, these ought to be in their own files, but for now, we're going to just leave them there.